Okay, everyone, welcome. Everyone can hear me okay? Okay. So welcome everybody to another Heart to Heart here at Adoptions from the Heart. My name is Amanda Aliberti. I am a district supervisor and the birth parent post-placement support manager here at the agency. I am honored to be your host for this evening's exciting event. So for tonight's presentation, we wanted to really focus on mental health within the adoption community. Mental health is an important topic and oftentimes goes unnoticed within the adoption triad. Our goal for tonight is to provide a platform for voices to be heard and to help destigmatize support for mental health. So tonight we have a variety of amazing panelists who will discuss their experiences with adoption and how mental health played into that. There are many misconceptions surrounding adoption, especially with mental health, and we'd like the opportunity to hear from our clients. First up, I'd like to introduce Christian Mayer. Christian is an international adoptee born in Chile and adopted by American parents. Adoptions from the Heart was very excited to welcome Christian to our Adoptions from the Heart team in 2023, and he's now a social worker here at the agency. Christian has used both his personal experience as an adoptee to help provide extraordinary support for his clients. Welcome, Christian.
Hey, thank you.
There we go. Next up, we have Julia Ruggiero. Julia is a licensed clinical social worker and adoption competent therapist. Julia is also an international adoptee, born in Colombia and adopted by American parents. Julia has been providing therapeutic services to individuals and families of various ages and backgrounds for over 6 years, and she recently joined our team to provide direct counseling to our clients. Welcome, Julia.
Thank you, Amanda.
Julia is not feeling well tonight, but she's a trooper and she came on so that she could at least do the beginning part of the presentation. So we're just really thankful that you're with us, Julia. Thank you. Next up, we have Samantha Thurlow. Samantha is a birth mother who placed her daughter for adoption in 2019. Samantha works as a pharmacy technician, and she loves the open adoption that she's created with her daughter and their family. Samantha is a proud member of our birth parent support group. She's interviewed for AFTH TV, and she loves spreading positive awareness about adoption. Welcome, Samantha.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And then we have Morgan Burns. Morgan is a birth mother who recently placed her son for adoption this past January. Morgan has been a huge advocate for open adoption and the supportive services that she's received through Adoptions from the Heart. Morgan is an active member of our birth parent support group. She's participated in AFTH TV interviews, and she recently volunteered this past Sunday at our Fall Fest fundraiser. So we're very appreciative for Morgan. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure to be here and to be a part of these events that you guys throw. So it's always great to be here.
Okay, so before we get started with our panel discussion, just a quick reminder that tonight is a fundraiser. Please know that all donations that we raise go directly back into Adoptions from the Heart's programs and services. So we do encourage everyone to donate. Our goal is to reach $500 for tonight's fundraiser. There are a few ways that you can donate. One way is to go back to the welcome email that you received with this Zoom link for tonight, and you can click on the link to make a donation. You can also follow the instructions on the screen, or you can open the chat box, and one of my team members will be inputting the donation link right there, so you can easily click and make a donation. We will also have a raffle at the end of tonight's presentation. You can purchase your entries through the registration page listed in your welcome email. We will be giving away a $100 Amazon gift card at the end of tonight. There's still time if you'd like to purchase a raffle ticket. Entries will close at 8:15 p.m. If you have any questions throughout tonight's event, we do ask that you either type them into the chat box or just wait until the end of the presentation when we open up discussion for the audience. Okay, so let's get started. We're going to first start with Julia. Hi, Julia.
Hi, Amanda. Hi, everyone.
So, Julia, I'm hoping that you can offer our audience a little bit about the professional perspective. So, you are an adoptee yourself, and you're also an adoption competent therapist. Can you kind of lay the ground for us of just what you've seen in your personal experience as well as professional of how adoption connects with mental health?
Sure. I think that um, mental health in adoption it's so unique. The needs of adoptees are unique. The needs of birth parents who have decided to place their children for adoption are unique, and the needs for families, for adoptive families, are also unique. It's a different way of making a family. Of course, not any less meaningful, right? Not any less valuable, not any less legitimate, but it is different from the norm, right? And so therefore it needs to be treated as such, and acknowledged that there are those unique needs. And so excuse me, my personal experience with adoption has it has grown, it has evolved over time, with age and with more time to process everything and to process trauma, to process just complicated feelings and, form my identity. All of that, my adoption story and the way I tell my adoption story has changed. And that has been really positive in huge part due to finding mental health care that was competent in adoption. And when we say competent, what we really mean is a mental health professional that understands those nuances and those unique needs, and understands that adoption, is not a singular event that happens to someone. It's an ongoing, lifelong journey and an exploration and experience. And so for me, I had seen a few different therapists growing up because I had, really wonderful adoptive parents who recognized a need for extra support for me, who did understand that I had suffered loss through my adoption, and layers of loss too that they could not relate to. And when I say layers of loss, I mean losing, because I was adopted by a white family, and I myself am Colombian, so loss of that racial heritage, and of losing that sense of looking around me and not seeing myself in those around me, and then loss of culture, and then of course separation from my biological family. So they recognized that, and so they got me support pretty early on to help me through things. But I noticed, even then, unfortunately, even when I was young, that a therapist didn't always understand. And I remember hearing language from therapists that didn't feel good, that felt harmful, such as talking about, oh, do you know anything about your real family, your real parents, right? Something like that is so commonly used, unfortunately. And, I think people don't realize the effect that can have. And then others too, who maybe pushed the gratitude narrative, which is a narrative that a lot of adoptees, especially in the US, hear, of, oh, well, you came from a really poor country or a really poor family, a really poor situation. You should just be grateful. that, that you're here and that you're a part of this family now. And it's like, well, two things can be true at once, right? So I have always felt immense gratitude for my family and for my circumstances. I mean, I love them so much, and they have given me so much opportunity, and my birth mother played a huge role in giving me that opportunity too. However, I still also, when I was younger, experienced things like anger and sadness and grief and um, curiosity and, confusion, just so many mixed feelings. Again, kind of holding those two complicated truths at once, and finding a therapist that understood what that really meant and that really validated that and was not like, oh, no, 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 don't be sad, just be grateful, which is something that, unfortunately, we adoptees do hear, even from, the people with the best of intentions. So, yeah, for me, finding that mental health support was so meaningful. And now I devote my life to, trying to provide the same thing for others in my community.
Well, and our agency has been so grateful that you've joined our team, and you really hit on an important topic that I hope our audience members really listen to, that when you're looking for therapeutic services, you really have to make sure that you're finding somebody that is aware of adoption. Because like you talked about, they could be using language that really can trigger you in a way that's just not appropriate. So making sure that they are adoption competent is important. And that's something that our agency has been really excited about in welcoming you to our team, so that you can provide that therapeutic service to our clients. What advice would you have for a prospective adoptive family who's listening to this? They're becoming more aware. What steps could they take right now to kind of prepare for making sure they have the right resources for their child down the line? What could they be doing?
Yeah. Um, so I think you can start by, looking locally to see if even starting with like your community center, to see if they have any mental health resources with adoption competent therapists. And, that's something that you can ask. I always encourage people to kind of interview prospective therapists and, ask them, how much experience do you have working with adoptive families or adoptees? And you want someone who asks you a lot of questions about that, and about, how you feel about becoming adoptive parents. And in general, I think actually it can't hurt to even start some counseling yourself, just to have a space to say some of the things that you're thinking out loud, maybe some of the fears or anxieties you're having. Again, preferably with someone who is adoption competent. Um, and otherwise, as far as steps, I think all I can say is to just try to approach everything with openness and curiosity and compassion, and, really try to look at, mm, try to use what we call a trauma lens, which is, when you do meet your baby and you start your family, you might see some behaviors that are confusing to you, or just, get into situations where you're not sure how to handle them. I always recommend just try to use that trauma lens, try to look at the behaviors as your baby communicating some kind of need based on their previous experience. So I know I say baby, but I also mean it could be, an older child if you're adopting an older child too. Um, and and also, I guess I want to clarify, although I said trauma lens, it's not always, it's not always the case that the child has experienced trauma, right? Like adoption in itself is not necessarily cause for trauma, but that separation in the attachment can and is typically traumatizing. And so, but each kid is different, each adoptee is different, and the way, all of that plays out is different. So just to be aware of that and to be available and let your child know that you're there for them, that you're there to talk, to listen, to get them more support, if they want that. I think that all makes a big difference.
Thank you. And then finally, I just wanted your viewpoint. Mental health in general, there's still a lot of stigma associated with accessing resources and finding the right fit. Um, if somebody on this call was, whether they're a birth parent, an adoptee, or even an adoptive parent who's struggling, but they're too scared to find somebody and to seek mental health therapy, what advice would you give them about trying to like dismiss the stereotypes and misconceptions about seeking help?
Mhm. Um, I guess I would say that, it kind of comes back to human biology and that we are wired to want to connect with others. And we're not meant to do things all alone. And community is so important. Grief, things going through things like grief and anything difficult, it's so much easier when we lean on others, when we accept support and love and care from others. And so I would say, this kind of situation is no different. And I think there's also a further responsibility here too, in deciding to become parents, whether your child's adopted or not, no matter what, you are saying, okay, I am going to provide the best care I possibly can. And sometimes, oftentimes, that means getting more support.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate you, Julia. I always say your values align with the values of our agency, which is why this works so well. And we look forward to you continuing to provide therapeutic services to the clients that we work with. So thank you again. I know you're not feeling well tonight. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Hope you get some rest.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. I'm sorry, that I can't be here for the whole meeting. If it's okay with you, Amanda and Christy, I was thinking I could put my contact info in the chat just in case anyone does have any follow-up questions. I want you to feel welcome to reach out to me.
Wonderful. We appreciate that. Julia.
All right.
Yep. Take care. Have a
Okay.
great
Thank you, guys. Good night, everyone.
And if anyone wants to connect with Julia and can't find her for whatever reason, you can always call your local office, chat with a staff member, and we'll connect you with her. But Julia's been a great asset to our agency. She's phenomenal in the work that she does and bringing in her personal experience as an adoptee. So we look forward to the work that she's going to do with us. Christian, we're going to bring you into the discussion. So Christian also has the benefit of having the personal experience being an adoptee and has now worked with our agency for well over a year as a social worker out in the field working with adoptive parents, birth parents. He has seen a lot in his short time of being here. I'm curious, Christian, your perspective. I would imagine when you came to the agency, you came with a lot of thoughts, and then having seen what you've seen, what your perspective is on mental health within adoption in general.
Yeah, so I think Julia took everything I wanted to say. That was great. And I like hearing other adoptee stories and how they're similar and how they're different because that helps me learn. I know I'm not the only adopted person out there, so my perspective isn't a one size shoe fits all. So with mental health and kind of how it works, how I've been able to help is being in contact with other adoptees. Sometimes we'll have families that go through our program, and at times they'll call in and see what kind of resources we have. And I've been trying to kind of like vet more resources based off what we were just discussing on who's adoption competent and who's not, as I see that's very important. I've also been trying to do a little bit more research into, because there's not a ton of adoption competent services out there. So I've been trying to figure out what's the next best option. And I've been starting to look a little bit more into grief and loss counseling and seeing how that can kind of intersect with adoption. Because again, I think a big part of my story and the story of the triad as a whole is there's a component of grief and loss in there, whether it's birth mothers, whether it's adoptees, and even adopting parents who may have had miscarriages, who have gone through IVF treatments and that. So there's a piece that comes along with that as well. Moving forward on the triad and how I consult birth parents, I'm fortunate enough to have opened up my adoption, and I've gotten to speak with my own birth mother at a pretty deep level, and see and hear and feel the difficult like decision that she made when I was born. So after being able to hear that, and that really helped with my own healing, I've been able to kind of counsel and have more or be empathetic for birth mothers and understand that this is an extremely difficult decision for them. It's not something it's not something that comes easy. They don't wake up one day and say, "Oh, this is what I'm doing." It's something that we take. We do a lot of counseling beforehand, with like resource counseling. Okay, um, if we could help you with like food or housing or childcare or something, could we navigate these avenues first before we make an adoption plan? Um, and so that's helped me with that. And then it's also helped me after with counseling birth parents after they've made an adoption plan and have placed to understand to reach back out and make sure that they're doing well. And when I say well, again, I don't mean like sunshines and rainbows and like happy and whatnot. I mean like getting by and are able to manage their emotions in a healthy manner, because I think adoption throughout, I mean life in general is just a bunch of ups and downs. I think they're kind of magnified when adoption's involved. So to understand and counsel and say, hey, you might feel good today, but tomorrow, you might not feel great at all, or you might feel terrible. So what do you have in place to help you? Who's your support system? Do you need me to call out to you? Do you want to call into me? And working that way. And then with adoptive parents, having them understand to look through that lens of adoption. It's very difficult when I haven't had my own kids or adopted any kids, but I imagine as a parent, it's very difficult to kind of pause and say, okay, these behaviors might be because of this, especially when it's in the moment. If you're out with people, if things are busy, you come home from work, they come home from school, it's been long days, and now you have to put on this adoption lens as well and parent that way. It can be tiring. So just having parents and prospective parents understand that as well before going into adoption, and again, get them the right resources, make sure they have a strong support system, friends, family, and community. I think overall community, so that the whole family can have that connection with their own people. So that's how I've seen mental health kind of play a role in this.
Christian, I'm curious if, I don't know if I've ever asked you this question, but when you started working with us and you started counseling expecting and birth parents, birth mothers specifically, did it, I don't even know if I'm wording this correctly, but like, did it bring up for you maybe a better understanding or perspective of what your own birth parent may have gone through that you hadn't thought about before, because maybe you hadn't been exposed to as many birth parents? Like, did it bring up anything for you of just better recognizing reasons why people choose placement and the emotions and feelings and the mental health that's involved with it?
So I think it solidified it. what I had heard from my birth mom before, and I feel comfortable in my counseling of finding parallels. So even though I might not have experienced the same thing, relating like my own story, my own feelings, and what I've heard from other people's experiences to that experience. So seeing like, oh, this is similar to the other one, has I feel like that's really helped me with counseling and in that matter. But that's a great question. That's the first time someone's asked me that.
Yeah, and Christian and I are obviously colleagues. We work together all the time. And I was just thinking that as you were talking about your personal experience and I know the work that you put into the birth parent counseling and support that you give. And I would just imagine that there can sometimes be a connection.
Yeah, so um I think I'm able to counsel better based off of that, where I don't judge anyone because I didn't know my own birth, like my own story for 20 years. So I had made up tons and tons of different stories about my own placement. And I think that's honestly kind of prepared me. Also, not to dive into Morgan's story at all, but working with Morgan as the first birth mother I've worked with, we'll get into that later, was kind of a shock and made me realize like, okay, there are some extremes in these scenarios, and I'm gonna be working with extremes that look different in every manner. So just going into it as like an even keel and understanding that no matter what the person story I'm working with on either side of the triad, I'm here to kind of be their anchor and maintaining that to help reel them back in and see, okay, what's the facts here and what's the feelings.
Yeah. Well said. And I think reminding everyone the lack of judgment is really important in what we do, right? From all members, for all members of the triad, and the idea of understanding that someone else may go through a different experience and realizing there's other layers to that, especially with mental health, and not judging because you don't know what they're going through. And I still think there's a lot of stigma specifically for birth parents who are choosing placement when it comes to mental health. So I think that's really important. Can you just talk a little bit about the adoptee support group that the agency has recently started and what your goal is in running that group?
Yeah, so we've been running an adoptee support group. Um, I, I forget if we had one in the agency before I was here, but either way, we just started back up, or we started it. I'd run one previously and kind of had some good mentors who ran support groups at that point that taught me how to lead this one. And the reason why I like originally thought of it was because I never had a space to speak about my adoption. Whereas when I was younger and going to therapy, I think in middle school, it was kind of family therapy, and we shared a therapist. And my middle school brain told me that he was telling my parents everything, um, or like it's another adult, and I just have to like I have to act really proper around them and can't be my authentic self and who I am again, especially as a younger adolescent. So the adoptee support group is supposed to be an area where adoptees can listen to other adoptee stories and let out what they may be afraid to tell their parents, what they may be afraid to tell therapists, um, and and connect and bond over that. And then my role in that is to redirect them into a more positive um, outlook on things. You know, it's okay to be angry, but what are you going to do with that once you're done being angry? How are you going to heal after that? Because I think that's part of like the grieving process, but how do we heal after we're done grieving?
Yeah. Yeah, and jumping back to what Julia was talking about earlier, the idea of community and realizing that there's others out there who may have similar feelings as you and normalizing the feelings of loss that someone may be going through is kind of the goal with the support groups. It is a newer development at the agency. It's not easy to keep a support group going. You have to find a good group of folks that continue to come and it builds up. But Christian and another colleague of ours is working really hard at that because we do have a lot of people call in with adoptees who are struggling. Usually in their teenage years is kind of when we get the phone calls. So to have that supportive resource at the agency is something that we're really looking forward to. And who better than Christian to lead that, to kind of help continue with this idea of space and community and support and leaning on each other. So we're grateful for that, Christian. Thank you for adding that perspective.
Yeah, of course.
So we are going to pause for a minute and we're going to show a video. Rebecca McGee, who's a previous social worker at our agency, did a video for us where she spoke about post-adoption depression or post-adoption baby blues. So let's turn it over to Rebecca.
So post-adoption depression syndrome is a term that was coined in 1995, so not that long ago. It finally acknowledged that adoptive parents can also have the baby blues. The baby blues is a depression that is short-lived, that happens after a new transition to parenthood. It can be a result of the emotional highs and lows of the process, and finally understanding the weight of raising an adopted child. The edition of the Adoption Advocate magazine did a big article on post-adoption depression. This was created by the National Council of Adoption, and it reported that anywhere between 8 and 32% of adoptive parents may experience post-adoption depression. So that's a pretty big number. And how we get, what are some of the reasons why people may have post-adoption depression is that even though you didn't physically labor, carry this child and deliver it, there's still a major adjustment after you adopt. There's sleep deprivation, managing the ongoing tasks of diapers, bottles, all of the administrative things that you have to go through, insurance, finding childcare. And then you might be surprised that you suddenly have these emotions about your child's specific birth parents, the unknowns of the adoption. You may feel like you have this giant secret where you're navigating, what do I tell and who do I tell about my child's adoption story? It could be a transracial adoption where you're feeling the weight of navigating your child's birth history and culture in your home. Loss of energy, unexplained sadness, sudden weight loss or gain, increased or decreased appetite, sleep disturbances, inability to concentrate, irritability, crying for no reason, and kind of like what you said where you're like watching your life outside of your life, where it's almost like I'm watching a movie reel of it, but I'm not really experiencing it. And those are some of the indicators. And when you have those symptoms, it's easier to get help with a doctor too, because you're ticking it off and they're like, okay, well, we can find a path for this. We can, like you said, medication adjustment, therapy, trying to figure out self-care. There's a lot of ways you can move forward and create a plan that'll help you. I remember one family that I worked with, they at their post-adoption supervisory visits were very, well put together. They, presented so well. They only talked about all of the happy moments, but then after the adoption was finalized, they came forward and were like, I think I had post-adoption depression, because they were afraid to get help. And that's what those visits are for, is support. We can talk about bonding. We can talk about what are the resources we could connect you to. The supervisory visits after the placement are not just a checklist for court, or, prove that you're, attached to the baby, but it's a resource for families. You're paying for a resource. And so when you have a social worker in your home for the 3 or 4 visits after placement, that's a great time to be honest and to talk about the highs and the lows.
Thank you to Rebecca for that video. Unfortunately, we had a guest speaker who was an adopted parent that was going to kind of, share a little bit about that perspective. They weren't able to make it tonight, but I think that video really highlights an important piece that we have to remember. People just assume that when you adopt and you grow your family and you become a parent, everything is all sunshine and rainbows, right? And you should be grateful. And you should not sit and talk about the lows that you may be experiencing. And Rebecca really highlights this concept of post-adoption depression because it is a real thing. And we want to make sure that our families who are preparing for placement understand that it is okay if you go through that. And we want you to be honest with us as your social worker so that we can provide the right resources to allow for you to move forward, because it can be really lonely and scary. And we don't want you to feel like you only have to talk about the good when you become a parent through adoption. So keep that in mind, especially for the prospective adoptive parents who are on this call. Okay, so now I'd like to bring in Morgan and Samantha to the conversation to better understand your perspective as birth parents and some of the mental health struggles that you may have gone through, continue to go through, so people can recognize that, yet again, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. And even though birth parents may become confident in their adoption plan, there's still this concept of loss that we're talking about. And each and every day, the idea of having to struggle through that for the well-being of your child in the choice that you made. So why don't we start with you, Samantha? Do you want to share with the group whatever you're comfortable sharing, but talk a little bit about when you first found out that you were pregnant, and kind of your mental space at that point when you were going through the motions of choosing placement?
So Amanda knows when I found out I was pregnant, I was in labor. So I didn't have any time to prepare for anything. But I knew that I wasn't ready to have a baby. I was not working. I was living at home. And it just wasn't gonna happen at that time. So I knew adoption was the best, and my parents were with me. But besides my parents, I didn't have like too much support. I had some friends, but I also lost some friends who didn't really agree with what I was doing and thought that it would make things better. And so I lost a couple of friends, but I also gained a lot of friends being a part of the support group. And so that was really beneficial. Amanda was there for everything. But I still am sad and I cry still, but it's still a struggle. It's been 5 years and it doesn't get easier, but I guess knowing that she is happy and living such an amazing life just makes it a little better.
Yeah. And I know in the past, Samantha, you've openly shared the idea of anxiety and depression and what that felt like for you. I remember when you and I first met at the hospital, you being very honest about that and that being a concern for you of your ability to parent at that time. Can you talk a little bit about that and having people understand the mindset that a woman who may be considering adoption is having when she's choosing adoption?
So I guess, well, before I found out I was pregnant, I was already struggling with my mental health. I went down like a really just bad time. I was super depressed, didn't even leave my house. I was really, really bad. And then I moved back home, and that's when I found out I was pregnant. And I mean, I was still depressed for a while and didn't want to go anywhere. I wasn't working for a while. But I was going to the support groups, which was beneficial. But it's still difficult. I mean, I still have my really tough days, and sometimes it's uncomfortable talking about it because I worry that people are going to judge me or not have anything nice to say, I guess. So I mean, it's gotten a little easier over the years, but it's still hard.
Yeah. And I'll share with folks, because again, I know these are conversations you've been okay with me sharing. Samantha has come so far. I think initially you shared a lot about how it was hard for you to even speak about it, right? Like you said, but I think over time through healing and learning how to cope with some of the feelings you were facing, you've become more confident. And, you know, even joining events like this tonight, I know is a big milestone for you to be able to express yourself and spread awareness about your story, but it's still not easy. And I want people to realize, like, it doesn't necessarily get easier, like you're saying, and people can't always like put everything with a bow on it and say, okay, she's good now, right? Like she got through it, she's perfect, she's happy, let's move on. It's a constant working on yourself.
It's like I'm always wondering like what she's doing or like if she's okay, like what's new about her, what she's learned. And so I think about her a lot, but she's happy and she's with an amazing family. So
Yeah, absolutely. And you're okay. I mean, you are this amazing person. I know you've done a lot with your life and your career, and you've got a lot of dreams ahead of you. Um, but again, the idea of judgment, I know, is still something that weighs on your heart. And one of our
Mhm.
goals for tonight's event is for people to recognize that birth parents struggle with that idea of judgment. And the reason why sometimes birth parents don't want to share about their story is they're worried, like Samantha's saying, about being judged and not looking beyond the fact that I'm a birth parent who placed my child for adoption, to also say Samantha's just a person, right? She's also a person. She's also valuable. She made a choice for the benefit of her child, and we should, respect her for that and not judge her for the decisions that she made. Right. Thank you, Samantha. We appreciate you sharing.
thank you.
Let's bring Morgan into our convo so the three of us can kind of connect. Morgan, do you want to share your story of when you found out you were pregnant and were considering adoption and you were able to meet our lovely Christian, who was your social worker?
Yes, I do apologize. My cat is my emotional support. She knows I'm like, so that's why she's kind of on my lap right now. So I just, want to apologize to everybody for that. Um, so yeah, my story is kind of similar to, well, actually exact to Samantha's. I didn't know I was pregnant with Jonathan until I was in the hospital finding out that I went in thinking I pulled my back out or something, not, realizing that that was going to be why I was there. And I always say to people, it was a very short, blurry 72 hours. I just went in. Uh, Basically, they were just like, "You're in labor, you're pregnant," and just everything right there. My whole world stopped. Like, and all I knew right now was that I have to deliver this baby, and that was it. And then afterwards, I automatically knew that like I could not keep him. Like I couldn't. Like there was just nothing I could physically, mentally um do at that point. Like just everything, it would have just not been the smartest decision on my behalf and my son's behalf to keep him, and that would have been selfish of me. And that was always my biggest thing is I don't want to be selfish because that's not fair. And I think it was about 11 o'clock at night. I think I got a hold of you guys, and it was a Saturday, so I wasn't expecting how quick everything was happening. And then Sunday morning, yeah, Christian was actually came in while I was holding him. So, and having somebody who was adoptee and being a guy, I felt more comfortable because then I was looking at it from the point of view of this is going to be my son one day. Like my son's going to have to go through this too. Like, and it was just amazing being able to feel not only supported, but not judged through this entire process and just being more than, sorry, confident of everything that like everything was going to be okay. And I just felt like just by talking to you, Amanda, like I just felt safe. And I was happy when you were on the phone with me and I was able to answer those questions to, because at first I didn't want to really know anything. I was scared. I think that was my biggest thing. I think that's the biggest thing that I will regret is at first my flight mode just kicked in and I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to know anything about him. Just wanted to sign the papers and leave. Like, but then it's like just something takes over and you start to think rationally again. You start to think logical. And it was just like, okay, but I need to know. And that was the biggest thing is having Amanda on the phone with me to be able to ask the nurse these questions and being like, I need to know this answer and I need to know. And then having Christian support there with me through, having to find the family and knowing like he was very, at first, I think I wanted closed adoption. I think I didn't really want to, yeah, I think that's where we were at. And like I said, it was kind of a blur. There's somebody, so I still kind of like, I think I have trigger moments where like I go back to that night and I'm like, oh my God, did I really say that? Like, or is that how I really reacted? Um, So I think then when, you explain more of how open adoption works, I think it just changed my mind into going, this is what I want. And I thank Christian more than anything for that, because him kind of just opening up a little bit about his story and about not knowing, it kind of just made me sit there and realize, like, I don't want to do that. Like, I want my son to know, like, that I was there and I held him and I did this for him. Then after it's hard. Like, it's, like I said, I had a short 72 hours to basically go home, make a decision, and that was it. And then that Tuesday came, and I feel like that was the biggest relief, is that watching him just go off with his family. And I think to me was like, okay, he's safe. He's okay. He's where he's supposed to be. Like, I'm a big believer in the universe takes things and the universe gives you things. And I think the universe took that, but it also gave me back a lot of, like, resources and support and a community of people that I would have never been a part of if it wasn't for this. And I am more than grateful to his family that has him, because they are just, I can't just say anything nice, like, just nothing but great things. Like, they send me pictures, they sent videos, like, he just looks like he was just built and meant to just go there. Like, like I was just the just drop off point. Like, I was just this, like, I guess I call it the stork. Like, I was just the sign, seal, deliver. And I think some people don't see the behind the doors. I think they see, like, what we try to put on as the brave face. Like, we're okay with the situation. Everything's fine. It's great. It's, but behind closed doors, it's a struggle. There are days where I get these just phantom feelings where it's just like, oh my God, he should be, like, I should be home right now with him, or I should be, but then I just look aside of it and I go, what would that look like? And the fact that I can't even picture, like, him being here and having that right there for me was like, this is how it's supposed to be. Like, it's okay. And this is how it's supposed to be. Yeah. Sorry.
No, you're good. And we appreciate you sharing kind of a little bit of the step-by-step of what occurred when you found out you were pregnant and in active labor and having to make these big decisions. And it is overwhelming. And I definitely recall you feeling, or not you feeling, you telling me on the phone that night at 11 o'clock, like, I want to separate myself. I don't want to be. And I just said, Morgan, take this one step at a time. You're feeling this way right now. Let yourself get some rest tonight. You may feel differently tomorrow. Let your worker come in and meet with you. And I think through your counseling with Christian and having an awareness of maybe a little bit of the adoptee side of things,
Yes.
you saw the benefit of openness, and we're so grateful for that. And we would never push openness on anyone. We have many birth parents that do choose more of a closed relationship because that's just what works for them, and we're completely respectful of that. But we want to make sure you're fully educated on what your options are and what open adoption can bring. And the great thing about openness is it doesn't have to just be one way at every moment in time. You can kind of come and go when it's right for you as a birth parent, because you may be going through things in your life that you have to take a pause and step back and not be as involved. And that's okay too. But Christian and I wanted to make sure you had that opportunity. And since January, you have just become a totally different person in terms of your connection to all this. Both you and Samantha are members of the support group. Can you share what that sense of community has brought for you in terms of your mental health and the idea of being with other women who have kind of walked in similar shoes as you?
I mean, I can just say that I think I came in like the month, like the first, after having him, I think I came in pretty, I just know I needed to go somewhere and talk to, because when I was going to, like, not that my friends and my family wasn't support, they just don't know how to. And I think that's the biggest thing, is that when you have people who care and love you, it's like they want to support you, but they don't know how. And my biggest thing is going into the birth mother support group, for me at least, was very eye-opening. And it was great just to feel like it's okay. You're here. This is what we're here for. You know, me and one of the birth moms actually became very close out of that group. And it's great having like, just having that friend that understands, like I can call her and just be like, this is how I feel today. And, you know, it's also too, it's, you learn terminology. You learn new words, you learn how to cope with things a lot better. And it's nice hearing from other people's stories saying like, hey, I'm on the same path as you. It may look a little different. I may have done it a little differently, but we are all walking down the same path. And I think that's what's amazing about it, is because you're just in a room full of people who are just, hey, we're here. Like, we are your biggest cheerleaders. We are your biggest supporters, and we got your back. And I think through this whole experience, that is the most thing that you need right now, is just having that go-to person, is like, it's just going to that, hey, I don't know how to feel today, or something's not, I don't understand this. And having a team of not only like therapists and not only people that have been through this to be there for you, it's just, it's overwhelming to know. And it's overwhelming in a good way, not in a, you know, it's just, it's good to know that there are arms open for you, and it's okay to cry, and it's okay to feel, you know, have good days and bad days. And like you said, it's a roller coaster, you know, you're going to go through some loop-de-loops, you know, some terms, but it's just, it doesn't stop. And it's just a very, one day is a great day. The next day you're kind of just sitting in a, well, what did I do? But then it's like, I get those pictures and I get those videos in and I get those little messages, and it's just like, nope, I did the right thing. Like, I know right there and then I did it. Like, and like I said, it's just amazing having, and I encourage everybody to always pop in on the, like, if you're a birth mom, just drop in on the support group. Even if you don't have anything to say, just stop in. It changes. Like, I don't think I would have been able to get this far with my adoption if it was not for the agency and Amanda and Christian and all the wonderful ladies that I met in our support group.
How about for you, Samantha? I know over the years, you know, you've kind of come and gone with the support group. You've also done a lot in terms of the AFTH TV videos and interviews and whatnot. Like, what has that done for you in terms of
So
your
I
commitment?
think my first support group was, it was like a week or two maybe after I gave birth. So I was still like a ball of emotions. I didn't even want to go in, but I'm very thankful I did. I didn't feel judged. They didn't like pressure me to talk about anything, and I felt just very welcomed, and like everyone knew what I was feeling. Um and I also just agree with everything Morgan said. Just yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of the goal. And this goes back to what Julia and Christian were both saying earlier, this idea of not feeling alone, knowing there's a community out there, recognizing that there are challenges. It is unique adoption, right? And it's okay for people to need some help and need some support. And you may have days where you just don't feel good, and that's okay. I have a client, she placed 7 years ago, and to this day, there are triggers that happen for her where she'll call me and say, I feel terrible today. I feel sad. I feel like I don't regret my decision, but I feel the loss today and I need support and I need help. And I just want people to realize like that happens. It's not where you just place your child and then that's it. You just move on with life necessarily. And we have to create space for that and understanding and not judge people for that, for those the choices that are made. Morgan and Samantha, is there anything that you want people to know that we haven't spoken about of just your experience as a birth parent in connection to mental health? I know we talked a lot about like lack of judgment and things like that, and anything else that you want people to recognize?
It's a two-way street too. I feel like between the adoptive parents and the birth mother, like birth parents, I send videos and pictures too of my life. I keep it very like, I love that they're willing to share their life. So I feel like a part of me should share mine as well. Like, I always give them little updates of like when I'm doing stuff like this, or, like Halloween, and, just show them too that like you're here. Like, you know what I mean? Like you want to be involved just as much as they are involving you. And it shouldn't be just me sucking in all the like, you know, glories of like I should be sharing my lives too, to show them like, thank you for what you've done for not only my son, but for, well, they're your son. I shouldn't even be really, I'm still learning that terminology, how to say that right. But that, you know, that's his parents. And I've always respected that from day one. And what I respect about them is, I even said, I think Christian was there when I said it. You know, every 5 years, just send me a photo here and there. Like and I've seen them twice this year. And you know, the line of communication can be it's like a tit for tat. Like it's very weird because you're like, well, I don't want to overstep, but then I don't want to, but then I think on their end too, like it's just, you're not going to know what to do, and you just have to build that foundation. Like it's just a foundation that you have to build from the ground up. And it's just, it's going to go ways, and you know, things are going to happen, but you just have to stay positive in it. And I feel like if just communication is the biggest key, and you just show like, hey, I'm here. I love what you guys are doing. Also, hey, this is what I'm doing, and blah, blah, blah. It really keeps that line of communication open. And it really, I think you can build a great relationship, and it doesn't have to be this, I guess, stigma of like, well, that's like the real mom, and but no, that's not what it is. No, like I just gave, I feel personally, it's like I gave them their life. Like, and they're giving a part of me a life. And that's my biggest thing, is I just am more grateful for them than I think they will ever be for me. But yeah, just keep the line of communication open both ways. And it doesn't have to be I don't know, I'm very awkward and I have very bad anxiety. So for me, it was a little like, but they're very great people. And I feel like it's a unique experience. And I think as adoptive parents and birth parents, you need each other at some point.
Thank you, Morgan. And for you, Samantha, anything else you want to add to that?
I would say communication is really important. Sometimes I struggle, like we will email, and I struggle with like what to say, or but I learned it's just, I'll say what I'm feeling, and they'll always respond. And sometimes they'll send random emails with pictures and updates, and so that always makes it better.
Well, and actually, Samantha, you hit on something important, that the idea of communication, especially at the beginning between the birth parent and the adoptive parent, knowing what the boundary is takes time. So I know that in your situation, you and I spent a long time navigating, like, you knowing that it's okay for you to ask or to.
Yeah, I just never wanted to like overstep, or like feel like I'm asking too many questions, or like getting too involved. But I think we're at a good point now, so.
Yeah, and that's very common in many triads. So I think prospective adoptive parents who are on this call should keep that in mind. I normally hear it from actually both sides, of them reaching out saying, well, we don't know if we should send an email or send a text because we don't want to push too hard. And then on the other side, the birth parent will say, well, I don't want to ask because I'm nervous about offending, or I don't know if I'm going in too much. And I say to everybody, if you don't express yourself, the other side doesn't know, right? So there has to be some level of communication. And if you're curious, you have to ask. And sometimes you got to rip that Band-Aid off and just be honest. Still be kind and caring, but you can be honest about how you're feeling and what's working and what's not working, so that you can organically build a trusting relationship together. But that just takes time. But just remembering that even though you're feeling this type of way, the other side may also be feeling some type of way. So you're not alone. We're all trying to navigate this. There's no right way of handling communication between a birth parent and an adoptive parent. You just have to be honest with your feelings, for sure. And I will just comment and say, as we're talking about this idea of communication and expressing yourself, in my experience, whether I'm talking to an adoptive parent, an adoptee, or a birth parent, the ones who truly put in the work and really express themselves, whether that's through support groups or counseling or an AFTH TV interview where they're able to go on a platform and voice what their experience has been. Those are the ones that tend to handle their mental health a little bit easier. Not to say that it's great, but they're able to cope with it a little bit better. Because I think the more you talk about it and realize that you're not alone, the easier you're able to manage it. So I find that folks who really put in the work are the ones that are able to move forward. When you see women like Morgan and Samantha who put that work in, continue to put that work in, you're able to see a little bit more of confidence that shines through. You guys share. Okay, why don't we open up to our audience? If anybody has a question or a comment, anything that you'd like to ask Morgan or Samantha or Christian, or just something in general you'd like to add to the conversation, I welcome audience participation.
I just wanted to jump in quickly, Amanda. My name is Christy, and I've worked at the agency for 20 years now, and adoptive mother myself. We adopted 9 years ago. Amanda and I have worked together for, however long you've been there, right? Years. I will say that as an agency, we've really adapted and changed over the last 20 years too. I think at the heart of what we do has always been openness. And because we're really unique in our aspect because we were founded by an adoptee. So from the get-go, Adoptions from the Heart really had a different way of looking at adoption because it was from initially an adoptee's perspective, which is really rare in the world of adoption. And I think that because now we've created platforms like Adoptions from the Heart TV or Heart to Hearts or the Birth Parent Support Group or the Adoptee Support Group. And we also employ quite a few members of the adoption triad. We have birth parents that we hired, we have adoptees, we have adopted parents, and our discussions in our social work meetings, in our development meetings, we're always trying to wrestle with how can we do this better? How can we address issues and gaps in our services? How can we continue to grow? And I think that kudos to Julia and Christian and Samantha and Morgan and Samantha. I've known you the longest of everybody who spoke, and just seeing you being able to share your story. Just know that when you talk and share your story, we take it to heart. There's not one Heart to Heart or AFTH TV or podcast that I've not heard that I'm writing down notes and we're trying to think, okay, here's how we can do this better. Here's how we want to reach people. Your words really are impactful. And because you're willing to share them, we're continuing to grow. We take pieces of what you say and build it into the fabric of who we are. And so I just want you to know that's incredibly important that you share, not just for the audience that's listening to you today. I know that sometimes Samantha and some other birth parents we've had on has also said how healing has been for them to share also, but it's really valuable for how we continue to move in the world of adoption. It's very different than it was 20 years ago, right? And we want it to be different. We want to do better. When you know better, you do better. And so I just want to thank you and know that it's really important work that you're doing. You're putting work into yourself. You're putting work in to sharing with the agency so we continue to do better for future generations. And so I just wanted to thank you from the agency perspective too.
Thank you. I appreciate you and Amanda and everything you guys have done.
Any other thoughts, comments, questions? It's pretty interesting. Christy was talking about people who hear these stories and they're able to use that for their own healing. It's also important to recognize we have many women and men, or specifically women, who may join our support group or counsel with a social worker and end up choosing to not place their child for adoption. Right? We have women who gain the supportive services and end up choosing to parent. Or maybe end up choosing to work through their state, service center to access the resources they need or work with family. And that's okay too. That's the point of all this. We're not just here to push adoption on people, but we're here to provide support and a sense of community so that you can feel like you're not alone, specifically when you're facing an unplanned pregnancy and you're trying to navigate, what's the next So I just wanted to highlight that piece as well, that we work with many women and men who join our supportive services and don't choose adoption because they realize it's not for them, and that's okay also.
We have a
Anybody else
comment.
who maybe wants to
Yeah, we have a comment that
comment?
just said, I'm an adopted parent with a desire to meet our birth mother, but it was closed. I think we have that often, right? And so sometimes we hope that, I would say, keep doing the work, keep trying to acknowledge and try to keep it open. I think that's really important because you never know. But also, I hope that hearing the stories of birth parents who, even though they're not your child's birth parents, can be helpful and healing in a ways that you're getting a different perspective. But know that as an agency, we understand how difficult that is on either side when one side is desiring more of an openness than is provided by the other for a myriad of reasons. So thank you for sharing that. And then Amanda, we have something from Jeff and Kelly for Christian.
So a large part of this has been through our outreach services that we do, where we go out into the community and find different resources for families and give them some of our information and everything. What I've been trying to look more into, because I feel like the adoption competency has been a big topic, in our agency for the year or two. So just kind of again like looking into like intersectionality of with like therapists who are like grief counselors or kind of focus in that, and who also are focusing in adolescents or youth and young adults. I think that's a good mix. And then are also trauma informed therapists as well. So I think a large part of that, like I think that kind of overlap would be is how I've been narrowing down kind of where I'm searching into. And then again, speaking with different outreach locations and letting them know what a little bit about our program, so that way if they're not already have adoption on their mind, they can start thinking about that, as I know a lot of these places like to continue their education. And we do offer to them like to do adoption training on how to use proper language, what adoption is, what it can look like, what it isn't. So we've been trying to get that push in our area. I know that's been for the Wynwood office. So and I feel like in other offices have been trying to do that as well.
Amanda just got kicked off with her internet right now. So thank you, Christian, for answering that. Are there any other questions, comments? I think they made a really good point in explaining that our desire as an agency is not necessarily to have women decide, or expecting parents or birth parents for that matter, choose adoption. It's about providing all of the resources and support and making sure that they're deciding what they feel is best for them. And then we navigate that throughout the way. There is no shame if they work with a social worker for months and months and then later decide that they want to parent. And that relationship that the social worker builds with the client is so important because of that. They need it to be a safe space so that they have the ability to really share what they're feeling. And if they then have a change of heart or a change of mind, or if they have other questions, or in Morgan's situation, went from closed adoption to saying, no, you know what? I want to look into open adoption. How do I navigate this? Being able to just evolve with the clients is really important, I think. Yeah, go ahead.
It's kind of on that counseling as well, where I've seen it go the other way. And what I do there is sometimes I'll even mention to some birth parents who kind of might be on the fringe, similar to how Morgan was, and just let them know if you do open option, that way it's there for when you're ready. But if you end up not using it, then it's essentially the same as a closed one, or like you don't have the connection there. Or you don't have to communicate through that. So that's a little bit more about what I like, the counseling for that, and just letting them know they can, even if it's open, it can go either way as well.
Actually, if you don't mind me kind of piggybacking off of what Christian said, I think that's very important. And especially how like you expect Chrissy as well, like the relationship that you have with your client is very, very like it's a very big help to this whole thing. Because yes, I was at first, I wanted nothing to, and I am glad that Amanda and Christian both had given me both like those resources of what both sides is going to look like. So I had a big picture of to be able to make my decision actually properly and not running off of just how I was feeling in that moment. So I think that's very, very important, is to show what it looks like on both terms. And is this really what you want? And the moment I had time to actually really think about it, I was like, no, that's not that. I think in panic mode, yes. Actually taking the time to really think and talk about it was a big help. Like, and having, again, looking at it from both sides, saying, okay, well, that's what it's going to look like. That's what it's going to look like. It was no black, white, nothing. It was very clear. It's like, this is what's going to happen. This is not going to happen. And I think that becomes very important in the entire process.
Yeah, and I think it's really important, to your point, Morgan, we encourage this for all of our members of the triad, whichever part of the triad you are in. It's really important to also seek out voices of other members of the triad, right? Because you see the perspective from your side. And so understanding, and I think that when birth parents are able to share their idea, their experiences, it can really help adoptive parents who might be thinking, oh, okay, so there could be a lot of different reasons of why maybe my child's birth parents are not in contact right now, but it's important for me to keep the door open. Or as an adoptive parent myself, I get to hear Christian's point of view. I work in the same office as him, and so I'm hearing his point of view as an adoptee, and I'm thinking, okay, I need to be considering of all these things to be a better parent to my daughter, right? But it just goes in circles. So I think we want to challenge people to often hear from other members of the triad to really get a better full picture. And oftentimes it was adoptees and birth parents and birth fathers and birth mothers who were silenced in the adoption process. And we've been working really hard to try to make sure that there's platforms to share not just the rainbows and unicorns, as you said earlier, Christian, but that doesn't give you a really good perspective of what the adoption process is or how complicated and complex it is. But to really be real about it and to have support. I mean, Morgan and Samantha, the support group wouldn't do anything if everybody's just sharing the flowery moments and not actually supporting each other with, you know what? I don't know why, but this just really sucks right now, or this is triggering to me. But then to be able to be there, your words are being heard and shared with other people. So really helpful. Before we get ready to announce our winner of the raffle, we wanted to see if there was anybody else who had any comments or questions for us this evening.
Christy, I think I'm back if you can hear me.
I can hear you. I'm happy for you to take over again.
So sorry, guys. In the spirit of virtualness, my internet just went out, but I got you on my phone. So I'm happy I could come back. I apologize for stepping out.
Perfect. We were at the thank you and closing aspect.
Okay.
Announcing the winner, announcing at the raffles.
Great. Well, I'm happy we were able to kind of continue the discussion. This has been phenomenal, just hearing from our clients, sharing their stories. So let's announce the lovely raffle winner. Our raffle winner tonight is Kelly Ruley, which is exciting. She's a client of our Windward office. So congratulations. Our marketing department or Christian, who is your social worker, will be in touch with you. You have won the $100 Amazon gift card. So thank you for participating. Okay, guys. Well, we are going to kind of wrap things up. We appreciate all of your support and your kind donations tonight. Thank you very much for coming out and supporting us. These events are really about our clients voicing their experiences. We just want to give you the platform to do so. We thank you all for being a part of these conversations and your endless support for Adoptions from the Heart. We would not be who we are without the support of the community we serve. Please make sure to subscribe to our podcast on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts so you don't miss all of our great upcoming discussions. The podcast has really been a big hit. So for those who do listen to podcasts, please check it out. We've had some amazing guest speakers share their stories, and it's been great conversation. You can continue to watch amazing adoption experiences on AFTH TV. These are broadcasted weekly on both our YouTube channel and our Facebook page. We have a ton of interviews from birth parents, adoptees, adoptive parents, social workers. If you have not seen our full AFTH TV episode guide, please reach out to one of our local offices. I can't stress enough how useful it is to hear directly from the people that we work with. It's been a phenomenal resource for all members of the Triad, so please be sure to check those out. Make sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok to keep up to date with more of our events and our fundraisers. As a reminder, for those who don't know, November is National Adoption Month. We are doing our gift card drive, which is an initiative to provide birth parents with gift cards to buy groceries or gifts during the holiday season. Please consider making a donation to our gift card drive. We will also be hosting a Giving Tuesday event and an extra give to raise money during the holiday season. The holiday gift cards are a big hit at our agency. They really do help our birth parents who may be parenting other children. So I really encourage you, if you'd like to learn more about making a donation, to reach out to one of our local offices. If you found tonight's presentation to be powerful, please make sure to check out more upcoming supportive services at Adoptions from the Heart. We are always adding more online webinars, which provide education on various adoption-related topics. We have various support groups for adoptive parents, as well as expecting birth parents to come together and lean on each other for support. Please feel free to reach out to one of our local offices. Thank you all very much. We appreciate your support. Best wishes to you and your families. And on behalf of our Adoptions from the Heart team, thank you for all of your support. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you to Christian, Morgan, Samantha, Julia. We really appreciate you coming out and sharing your stories. It's events like this that remind us why we do what we do. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much.